Okay. Can you hear it now? Can't hear me now? Okay.
I'm in technology.
Like me.
Better?
Does it work at all? Okay. Can I use your mouse? Well, my program is called Behind the Shot because I think from a photographer's standpoint, you can have the finest equipment you want and you still can take bad shots. So you have to kind of learn your equipment. You have to learn to be patient. You have to learn a lot of things. So that's why I entitled it Behind the Shot. There's a picture of me. We were heading for Wisconsin to see the whooping cranes. And I decided it was kind of cute, so I just took a picture of myself in the mirror. Okay. There we go. This was the thing I entitled Patient Portraits. Just wait, they'll come to you. When I was a little kid, I watched birds with people, and I had an older guy tell me, just wait, they'll come to you. And I didn't quite understand what that meant. So I chased them all over the place like people do. And I finally got it figured out one day. Well, this is one of my early shots that I took of a ringneck duck. And if you look really closely, you can actually see why they call them ringneck ducks, because you can actually see the ring neck. You usually don't see that. I like to call them Nike ducks because of the Nike swoosh. But this guy came in on me. It was a cold, cold morning. It was sunny. The water had just thawed. This is up at Zerbel Slough, near just south of Mason City. And I was sitting on a little tea stool that I've got in the water, chest high waders, freezing. And this guy came in over my back and sat down. And when they sit down, when they're by themselves, like this big drake did, he didn't have a hen with him. And when you don't have a hen with him, his head's on a swivel all the time. And you do anything wrong, and they're gone. And I started hitting. I was doing 10 frames a second, which was phenomenally fast back in the day. And it clicks because I've got an old camera with a mirror that slaps, and it makes a lot of noise. And he picked up on that. And he was on the water for just long enough to get rid of the waves around him. And he took off just like that. But I did get this picture. And I like these kind of portraits because he's kind of cheeky. He's kind of looking around like, who are you? And then, of course, after that, I have wood duck. Everybody likes wood ducks. This drake was chasing a hen, so you can get by with murder if they've got a girl with them. And so they don't pay any attention to you. Wherever she goes, he goes. And 3 or 4 other drakes will go with him. So it's one of those kind of deals. So I got pretty lucky on that. He spent a long time on the water. And this is did you know what these are? What this? Not a Ross. What's that? Yeah, it's a snow goose. It's a blue snow goose. It's the blue-faced snow goose. And I threw this in there because I didn't know how many people had seen. In fact, I had, because if you know anything at all about duck hunting and goose hunting, these birds are spooky. It takes a lot to get them to come down. These guys were on Big Marsh, and he was more interested. I don't know what he was interested in, I guess, because I was kind of chasing him in my kayak, and he was just kind of giving me the eye over his shoulder. And I thought, that's kind of neat, because I hadn't seen a blue goose like this ever. I've seen him up in the air 1,000 feet, but I've never seen him down on the water, and he just didn't want to fly. And so I thought, okay, I'll shoot you. And so that's a blue goose, and that's kind of neat because they have all the characteristics of a snow. It's just a color phase. This is my pelican shot. So the lady that mentioned pelicans. This was over at what's the lake outside of not Dyke? Yeah, Dyke. Grundy Center Lake. Yeah, Grundy Center Lake. This was a flock of about, I don't know, 50 or 60 of them. And this guy had the parts. He had all the parts. He had the big scoots on the bill, and he had the look. And so I thought, you know what? And the waves are choppy, and the wind was blowing. It was cold, and they were there, and I took pictures of them. The thing with this is, when you photograph birds, especially white ones, you want to have some kind of definition in the feathers, and that's kind of hard to get. That's one of those tricky things that you've kind of got to. A lot of these photographs are taken within 40 feet. So, farthest maybe from me to that wall over there, I can get them in, and others are much closer than that. This was a shot I took down in Florida. This is broad daylight, and you can adjust your camera so that you can focus and meter on the body of the bird, and that blackens the background. This was a spoonbill, And I drove into the park. My wife and I drove into the park down there, and I said, gosh, it would be nice if I could see a spoonbill. I'd never seen one. And I looked over my shoulder. Here he is standing right there. So I thought, okay, I'll take you. And he looks good, I think. He's pink and a little bit of blue tinge to him. This is an American avocet. The story behind this one, we were going to church one morning. I'd never seen one. Never seen an avocet. Looked for them forever. I think they're kind of pretty. Never seen one. And we're going to church. Turn around the corner. It was very wet in the spring. It was about, I don't know, 8 years ago, maybe 6, 8 years ago, when the roads went out, the gravel. It was so terrible raining. We had a lot of standing water in the area over by me. In fact, this was within a mile of my house. And we were going to church, and I pulled around the corner, I pulled out, and drove down the highway, and sure enough, there's about 50 of them standing in sheet water on top. I said, there's no way on earth we're going to be able to go to church, turn around, come home, and those birds are going to be there. We went to church, we turned around, we came home, and those birds were there. And so I pulled in the driveway, ran in, got the camera, ran back out, and they were still there. So I took videos of them, I took shots of them. That's just this kind of serendipity thing with me. It's a little bit bigger deal than that, because it's, yeah. Honestly, I think I could say, I would not be surprised if an emperor penguin, Tom, you always use this. I would not be surprised, honestly, I would not be surprised if an emperor penguin walked down my driveway some morning. Honestly, I'm serious. It's just, I've had a lot of experiences with things. It's a little Atlantic puffin that we took out of Maine. I went out on a pelagic boat to Seal Island because the pelagics are out there. The little Atlantic puffins and the razor bills and the auks or the little what do you call them, guillemots and stuff are out there. So we went out there, and I'd always wanted to see a puffin. They're cute little things. And this was a shot I took just a couple of weeks ago, unfortunately, of a horned lark. And I like his attitude. He just, this is snow, completely snow. And if you see, you can see that there's a little bit of a contrast right there. He's standing on a snowfield, and he's looking at me like, what are you looking at? And so I like these little horns and stuff. That's kind of cute. All right. This was a shot that I took of I think it's a least pewee. This was one of my first pictures that I put into a competition, and I got considered best of show for this because what you do with a camera, it's not just taking a picture of a bird. You can take a photograph of a bird, but you've got to worry about what's behind the bird. You got to look what you're looking into. You don't want it too noisy. You don't want a lot of stuff there. And so this was show me something I haven't seen before, and that's something they hadn't seen before of a bird taken like that. So I was kind of happy about that shot. This is a redwing I took a couple years ago. He was showing off for his girlfriends, and he wasn't moving, so I thought, okay, you're mine. And I got him right at the right time. He's got his epaulets out, the red, flashy and stuff. He looks pretty good. He's an attractive bird. The other thing I like to do is I like to get good-looking birds, because not all birds are good-looking. They're all birds, and they all look like that, but some of them are prettier than others. And so I try. This was a setup photograph that I took of this rose-breasted grosbeak. This took me, I don't know, a week to get this guy in here. Down below, that you can't see, this is an old dead sumac branch that I've got. Down below is a water. It's an old cast iron pan full of water. And up above is a black oil seed feeder. And I got this guy coming in, and he's a good-looking bird. And he was sitting there, and I thought, okay, I'll take you. Again, the background, pink at the top and green, and he's not bothered by anything. It's a rose. That's a good-looking bird too. As rose breasted go. This guy and I played a game. This is a scarlet tanager that was in my dogwoods. When he flew in, we don't get them very often where I live because we live in the middle of cornfields. But he came in, and I noticed him because I was looking out the window of my kitchen, and this orange thing came whipping across in front of the window. I thought, okay, I know what that is. And he landed in the dogwoods. My wife has a great big lane of dogwoods. And I said, okay. So I started watching him, and he was flipping from one dogwood to the other, going from my end all the way to the end, to the far end. And as he would go down there, I took out a chair and I moved the chair in the yard and I started taking pictures of him, and he would leapfrog back, and then he would leapfrog back and back there. And then I would move down and I would just get closer and closer and close the distance. And finally then he decided to stop and look at me like, what are you doing? And then after that, he was there for probably 2 hours, then he disappeared and I've never seen one again. But this was a couple years ago. But I like his look. He's kind of, I don't know, just has a look about him. This thing, the pileated woodpecker, I'd heard him calling in my yard. Never had one there. These trees are now dead. These are ash trees. They're all dead. But I heard the thing calling, and I thought, well, okay, that's a pileated. No way. So I was working out in the garage. I heard him again. Ran to the house. Got the camera on a tripod. Brought the tripod back in the garage. Kept working. The next thing I knew, this thing let out a call, and it sounded to me like it was in the garage with me. They're very loud, and so I kind of leaned out beyond the old truck there, you know, and he was right up in that tree, and I got him with my camera because I was ready for you. And that's the other thing you got to kind of be ready for him. This little guy, road runner, I think they're so cool. They just are so cool. And if you ever get a chance to see a road runner and it's looking at you with both eyes, that is really intimidating. I mean, if you're a lizard, you want to find the nearest rock you can crawl on, because that is not fun to look down those eyes. But this guy, we had spent the whole day out of Tucson looking, and my wife was really nice to me too, so she took me everywhere I wanted to go to see one of those things. No, couldn't find one. About 5 hours later, we drove back into the hotel, and in the parking lot is this guy. And he's completely habituated to people. And he's standing there like, okay, what do you want me to do? Well, that. And that's what I got. And you know, his little crown's up and the whole 9 yards. That's a neat bird. The roadrunners are cool. Then we've got eyes. I switched from birds. Audubon to me, my personal thing of Audubon is birds. The rest of it, no, it's just birds. But then I've learned that, no, there's more to this than that. This was on the Christmas bird count that we did this winter. This was a little small little raccoon that was up in a tree in the ditch. Remember that, Tom, when we were driving down the road and you saw that raccoon up there? Well, I took this picture of him, and the eyes kind of caught me. This has been evolving over the last couple of years. But this one, we were in Monterey. We were in Monterey, California, and I was standing, and I'm going to show you something which I think is amazing. We were standing there, and this old guy came up to me and started talking. And you know, standing there, and he goes, "Hey, that's an elephant seal." Like, I know, I'm from Iowa, I don't know. He goes, "That's an elephant seal." I said, "Yeah," and he goes, "They shouldn't be here now." So, of course, I'm slamming pictures of him, and he looked at me, you know, and my wife says, "He's so cute," you know, so okay. Well, I started looking at those eyes, and I thought, what is this? That is this. That is the side of the pier that the man that's talking to me and me are on, and this is the building reflected in that eye. And I thought, that's cool. I've got to do this more often. And it's, yeah, that, I mean, yeah, that's, yeah, there we are right there. And it's crazy. I thought, okay. But I do things like that. And this guy, I never did figure this out until it was almost too late. This is a broad-winged hawk, and he had been screaming at me for as long as I was in the woods at Mains Grove, which is just north, you know, just south of Hampton. And he was very close. And I thought, what's going on? Well, I was audio taping birds, and I put a gray, long-haired windsock over my microphone. And I'm thinking, okay, this guy wants to eat that microphone. And he just followed me all over the place. And, you know, and if you blow that up, that's very intimidating too. When they're looking at you like that, when they're staring you down. These are just kind of neat, some portraits that I've taken of them. This was a little saw-whet that that I got a picture of several years ago at the Christmas bird count with Mark Preschwelt. He made a comment about the saw-whet was down at his stomping grounds. I said, take me down there, show me where it is. Well, I can't guarantee it'll be there. I said, that's fine. Just, let's do it. And he was, and I just about had to lay down because I've got a long lens. I just about had to lay down to get that photograph, but those eyes are just absolutely piercing. And there's a rule in bird photography, and that is you have to dot the I to get, it gives it life. And so I did my best to try to dot the I. This is another I didn't want to dot. This is a diamondback rattler from Arizona, up near in the Phoenix area, Superior, Arizona, actually. And the story behind this is I walked down a path, maybe 4 feet wide. I walked down the path and I turned around and I saw the back end of that snake going where I had just walked. And he's a big snake. I mean, I'd never seen one before. He's a big snake. And I thought, that is a diamondback rattler rear end with the rattles and everything. So, of course, me being stupid, I go over and want to get as close as I can to this snake to take pictures of it. And he's looking at me like, yeah, that's close enough. And I thought, yeah, you're probably right. This was the great horned I took. And I never thought in my life I'd ever see this. We had a snow, maybe 10 inches. And it was dead quiet in the woods. This was another one at Mains Grove. I was walking down the path, and this guy had his head away from me. He was looking that way, and I was coming up behind him. And I took, I don't know how many pictures of his back. And I thought, this is dumb. Why am I taking pictures of his back? Because I'd never had a chance to do it before, so I did. And then I said to him out loud, I said, buddy, are you going to turn your head and look at me? And he went, and he turned right at me. Oops, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to give this a shot. Nope, sorry. He turned his head, immediately looked at me, and I popped him, I don't know how many times. And then he said, I'm done with you, and he flew away. Never had the chance again, but that's my story behind this one. This is my journey that we're going on. The other one was wings. And I picked up the idea, I want to get these things in the air, because that's what, God made birds to fly, and that's what they do. This is a little bufflehead whipping across the surface somewhere. I don't know, probably at someplace I got him. A little drake going crazy. They are good flyers, too. They'll hit 60 miles an hour in a heartbeat. This is a female harrier, northern harrier, that flew over. I was also dressed in camo, and I was interested. She was interested in me for some reason. Flew basically right in front of me. And I like it because she's obviously looking. And these claws are unbelievable. And if you've ever watched those birds fly, they are unbelievably good flyers. They can stall and go straight down and straight back up. They're just unbelievable flyers. I watched one of them one night take out a killdeer. She just came over, stalled, bam, came right back up with him. Yeah. These were sandhills that we took at night. Well, it was in the evening on the Platte River in Nebraska, and I thought it was kind of pretty to look at the blackbirds in silhouette against the sky. The camera sees so much better than we do at night, so you can do this kind of thing and get by with it. But I thought it was kind of neat. I like Japanese prints, and that kind of gives me it kind of reminds me of that kind of thing. This is a little, you want to challenge the photographers out there. You want to challenge, take one of these, coming in at high speed. The blue-winged teal flew by. You sit in a swamp, you sit in the marsh at night or in the evening, and they come in over you off the back, and it sounds like a jet. You can hear them coming in before they go over you. You hear this rush of wind, and then all of a sudden they come in, and then they'll just stall and plop right down. Just amazing. This is a nice drake. I've got all the rules there. I've got the I dotted. I've got the wings down. I did it right on that one. This red tail was sitting on a fence post. It's another one of these serendipity things. Was sitting on a fence post. I was going to Pintail, and he was on this fence post. It was a Sunday afternoon. It was nice. It was cold, but it was nice. And I got him out the car window right when he took off. So I got him on the downstroke, and you can see the tail, the wing primaries starting to flex and stuff. It's pretty neat. We were at well, I call it the Mitchell Pits because I'm old and I lived here my whole life. So what is it called now? Riverview. We were there on a Wednesday, bird watching, and this osprey flew over. Those are the ones that were in the tower, and he had this fish. The osprey is about 24 inches from tail to beak. I figured this fish is about 12 inches long. So he had quite a meal because he had little guys to feed too. But so they can handle a lot of weight. This one, this is kind of neat. This is what is that? A Forster's tern? And I saw what he was doing. I was at Big Marsh in my kayak, and I was watching this guy, and I knew he was acting funny. And so I'm just going to advance the pictures. He's stalled out. He's on his side looking down. And then he starts this. And it goes from this to this. He's kicking his wings back to this to this. Now the question is, why? Well, because he was looking after that. And that's him coming out with a fish in his beak. And I love the tail feather. Everything is aerodynamic with these birds, you know. Everything has a purpose. So he got his meal. And relationships, I don't understand why they call those things cattle egrets. I never did figure it out. But anyway, this was in Kansas. And these cattle egrets were all over this cow, and he seemed to be okay with it. And then, of course, you've got this relationship. You've got the love-hate relationships. In this case, it's, you know, that little birds are, you know, being nice. And this is the mother is here, the female is here, and she's adoringly looking up at her husband, who's singing loudly, constantly, nonstop all day long at my little birdhouse that I put there, and I planted the clematis 2 years before this photograph was taken, so that it would grow up about this high and have blossoms around it when she came, and she and her buddy came home back to the nest box. That house has now been replaced with a brand new one, so hopefully they'll come back and like them. And these are the babies. This was my cup plant that I had about 10 feet away from the nest. These little guys came out. We watched them, all four of them come out, brothers and sisters, and they all flew across, and they landed on that cup plant leaf, and they were all sitting there. One of them's asleep. This guy looks like he's about asleep, and the other ones are going, we're not going to sleep. But that was kind of fun. We watched those little guys come out of that thing for a long time. And this is kind of self-explanatory. I don't know, to me. This was at Calkins campus, and I coached girls track for a long time, and this is I don't know. Anyway, never mind. That is so typical. Anyway, she's just staring at herself in that mirror like, gosh, I'm good looking. And she'd been there for some time, because if you can see it back there, the ice is kind of swept off of the guy's car. It's kind of neat though, but it was cold that day too. And I thought I was in trouble. I was at where was it? Santa Cruz, the University of Santa Cruz, up north of Monterey. And I was walking around in their arboretum, and I'm kind of I don't know, kind of mess things up once in a while. And this woman in a uniform comes up to me and she says, "Sir." And when I hear that, I'm thinking, oh, crud, what do I do now? She goes, "Would you like to see the leucistic Anna's hummingbird?" And I said, "I would like to see the leucistic Anna's hummingbird." And she took me directly to it. This photograph was taken, that flower. When the trip was done and we were sitting in the airport, they don't do them anymore, but they used to have photographic magazines, you know. And I bought a nature photograph magazine, photo magazine, and I opened it up. And that picture was almost duplicate in there. I showed my wife, I said, this is how it always works. But I got him, and it's a nice little picture. This is my leucistic robin. You want to venture a guess what I named it? Completely unretouched. F8 was his name. F8 came to my house for 3 years. That's exactly what it looked like too. It looks like this Romanesque kind of F with a little 8 down here. Lost every fight he got into, got beat up left and right. But by golly, he showed up for 3 years. I haven't seen him for 2 years or 3 years now. So, but I'd never seen one of those before. They were kind of neat. And this is then I'm Not Always Birds. Am I good on time? Okay. Not Always Birds. This is a white line sphinx moth. This is out right outside my house on a sunflower that we have. I always wanted to photograph one of those things. They're such nice, kind of cool. And this was my little fawn that I literally, my foot was going down. This was at Pintail. My foot was going down, and I looked down, and he was curled up because Mom told him not to move. And he was curled up about this big. And I would have stepped right on top of him. But he got up, he hopped around, and he stopped and looked back at me. And I took a photograph of him. Thought he was kind of cute. This was a little tree frog that I took. And if you know how big black-eyed Susan, that's not very big. This little frog's about that big, you know. And I just like his look. He looks kind of neat. And this is a blue dasher dragonfly. It's a male. Again, the background has, you know, a little bit of look to it, but it's not imposing. Dragonflies are unbelievable things. They're unbelievable. Yeah, not always moving. Sometimes this is pintail wetlands back in the day, before it was kind of, you know, taken over by other plants. This was on a foggy morning. I was there watching phalaropes. This is a shot I took out of Moab, Utah, at Arches National Park. That was another picture I took to a lot of the county fairs. Did a good job on that one too. That state, if you've never been there, it's a gorgeous place to go. And this, to me, this is Utah to me. The red rock and then this green. I just love that color combination. I thought that was kind of neat. This is the coast of Maine. Looking out the next stop, I think if Maine is at Africa, I think the next stop across the water is Africa, and I was looking east. And I have a problem with airplanes. Anybody that's ever been on a Wednesday trip with us will know I'll take photographs of jets, airplanes, anything I can. These things just drive me nuts. Whenever the crop dusting planes come out, they come directly over my house. I'm talking, I'm sure it's more than 50 feet, but it sure doesn't look like it. I mean, I have so many pictures of the faces of the guys flying those planes, you know, and rivets, you know, bolts, all sorts of stuff on the bottom of them. They're unbelievable. But this is kind of Iowa to me. You got corn, you got one prop, and then you got a whole bunch of other props. And you know, you cannot get lost in my neighborhood. All you have to do is wait until dark and wait for the red lights to come on, and you cannot get lost. This is a shot that I always thought I would like to see. And this is the crescent moon. This was taken this fall when I was out waiting for short-eared owls. The first plane missed. The first plane came here. And the second plane, I was sitting there and I was going, I think this is going to work. And the sun was dropping all at the time. This is sundown. This is unretouched. The contrail from the jet that's the color it was. And I just thought that was kind of a neat little shot. The jet piercing the moon. Considering what's going on now, you know, where we're going around the backside of the moon and everything else, it's kind of neat. And this is Not Always Dry. This is me in my little dry suit playing with our boat, our 24-foot boat that we have in the pond up at Mason City, in the Blue Pit in Mason City, Lester Milligan City Park. If you know where that is, does anybody know where that is? Anyway, yeah. There's a lot of stuff under that water that you can go and see. And we spend a lot of time. In fact, I've got my tank in my car out in the parking lot right now from getting taken care of. So that's waiting for me to start using it. And so then people always ask us, you know, how close can you get to fish? And you can get pretty close. And I think I counted this once. There's like 80 some fish in this picture. These little bluegills. Literally, I mean, if you'll break open a zebra mussel, be prepared because they're coming after you. And this little video, this is a video of a northern at night. And this is a pretty nice northern, actually. And they asked, how close could you get? Now, I wonder if this is going to work. Yes. That's how close you get. The thing hit the camera. So, you know, we dive at night in the dark, and it's really kind of fun. Uh-oh. Okay, not always of this Earth. This is the total lunar eclipse from a couple years ago that I really like the color, that blood moony kind of thing. This was, of course, the northern lights that come in. My son called me up. He says, how come I don't see it like that? Well, because you're not a receptor in a camera. But these were coming in. This is a partial eclipse we had several years ago. I like the idea that there's the chunk taken out of the moon. I like the blue, and I like these sunspots on there. So I've kind of moved away from birds into all sorts of other things. Then this is the nebula in Orion. That's taken through the same camera I've taken all these pictures with. It's nothing, you know, you can just, all you have to do is kind of figure out what you're doing, and you get lucky on these things once in a while. This one is the Andromeda galaxy, which would be, where are we going here? Which would be up there, I think right now. Yeah, maybe not, but it should be over there. That's the Andromeda galaxy through that same camera. So if you've got a camera, whether it's a cell phone camera, or whether it's a little land camera, or if it's a big fancy camera, take pictures. Make sure you're out using it. Don't just use it to talk to. You know, take photographs with it, because my journey's gone from just bird portraits to praying I could get some birds to all sorts of stuff. So that's my little journey. I thank you for listening to me for, you know, this time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. And all the other photographers we had this year and last year. So it's always photos tell a story. And it was like, I like hearing these stories. And that was just wonderful, Bob, all the things you've seen. Right. Yeah. The stories. Thank you for sharing. I'm sure glad we got this to work this time, and that you could do that. And so we're getting switched out here, and welcome Terry up, and we need to get the mic. There we go. And we're welcoming Terry VanDeWalle back with us. We've had him a number of years ago. Maybe it's not that long ago. A couple, I don't know, one or two times done programs for us. Terry works for Stantec, and he's like a complete naturalist. He's an expert in reptiles. He does studies with Blanding's turtles and snakes and lizards, and he's got a couple of books over here I think he brought that he could probably sign for you if you want to purchase one later, right up here on this table up here, and I'll let him take care of that. But yeah, you're in for a treat. You know, I heard this program a couple of years ago on turtles. I think you know a little bit about turtles. You're going to know a whole lot more about turtles here in a little bit, and we'll have time for questions, and there's no hurries, and we'll welcome Terry VanDeWalle.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Yeah, nice to see you all again. I know my wife Wendy and I have been here a few times to see other programs, and it's great to be back. Last time I was here, I saw some wind turbines on the talk before this. Last time I was here, that's what we talked about, wind turbines and wildlife. Tonight, though, we're going to talk about turtles. To start with, I guess I'll start with the shameless self-promotion part of it. Neil Bernstein and I just last year published a book on the Iowa turtles, so the natural history of Iowa turtles. I do have copies, as Tom mentioned. I have copies here tonight if you're interested. And then a few years ago, I published a book on the snakes of Iowa as well. Have a few of those if you're interested as well. So if you're in those after we're done here, we've got them over at the table, and yes, I will sign for you as well. So turtles, if I can make this work. Oh, the other button. There we go. Well, this is the Audubon group, and of course, the talk we saw before this, lots of birds. But you might wonder, well, why are we talking about reptiles now? We're going to switch to reptiles. I always like to point this out that, remember, birds are just glorified reptiles, right? All the birds evolved from the reptiles, from the dinosaurs, actually. And so the turtles, they're a slightly different line. But all of you that enjoy the birds, you have the reptiles to thank for that. To start with, what are some characteristics of reptiles? Well, they all have dry, scaly skin. I think a lot of you, if you've seen reptiles before, we'll talk about what, these groups of reptiles here in a minute, but all reptiles have dry, scaly skin. They are what we call ectothermic or cold-blooded. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit as well. And then they do have leathery shelled eggs. That's different than the amphibians. The frogs, toads, and salamanders have those jelly-like eggs that have to be laid in the water. They can't be laid out of the water, otherwise they'll dry out and they'll die. And they don't have as hard a shell as the birds. You think about a chicken's egg or a robin's egg, something like that hard, brittle shell. The reptiles are in between. They have a leathery shelled egg. Now, what's really important about that is it is that leathery shelled egg and that dry, scaly skin that allowed the reptiles to move out and colonize the land. They were the first group of vertebrates, animals with backbones, and they were able to leave the water, totally leave the water and not have to go back. Amphibians could leave the water, but they always had to go back to lay their eggs and just had to stay close enough to the water so that they didn't dry out. Their skin would dry out. Reptiles, though, that dry, scaly skin and that leathery shelled egg allowed them to move out on the land. Eventually, the vertebrates then were able to colonize all of the land. So today, let's start out with a test. Just to wake you all up again. Let's start with a little quiz. There are 5 groups of reptiles that are alive on the earth today. Let's see if we can name those. What's one? Turtles. I would hope you would all get that one. Let me see if I can make this work from, if I can find the mouse. There we go. There we go. Turtles. Snakes. Lizards, yes. Toads are amphibians, not reptiles. Oh, very good. That's the one that not many people get. Yes, the tuatara. The last one, it's an easy one. I know you all know. I'm sorry, say it again. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Get my mouse one more. There we go. Alligators and crocodiles. That's right. Yes. These are the 5 groups of reptiles that are alive on the earth today. Who said the tuatara, by the way? Raise your hand. Oh, excellent. You get the extra credit points for tonight. Right. That's the one most people don't get. Alligators, crocodiles, snakes, lizards, and turtles are the ones all of us know about. Tuataras are pretty cool. They look a lot like a lizard. They're about 12 to 16 inches long or so. They live down on the islands by New Zealand, very rare. A very ancient group of reptiles, been around much longer than the dinosaurs, when the dinosaurs were here. The other thing that makes tuataras kind of interesting is they do have 3 eyes. They have an eye on each side of their head that they can see with. And then they have a third eye right kind of in the middle of their head. That eye is really just a light sensor. It tells them whether it's light or dark outside. So they don't get a visual image like they do with their other eyes. You all have the remnant of that third eye. It's buried deep in your brain. It's called the pineal gland in us. The pineal gland produces a hormone that helps you wake up in the morning when the sun starts to come up. And when the sun goes down at night, it stops producing that hormone and you start to get tired. You get ready to go to sleep at night. But do you know what that hormone is? Somebody might have said it. Melatonin, that's right. It is melatonin. So we all have, again, the mammals, we all have the remnant of that third eye, but again, buried deep in our brains. So reptiles, we're not going to talk about the other groups, although they are interesting as well. We're going to talk about turtles tonight. Maybe. All right, well, the most distinctive characteristic of a turtle, of course, is its shell. So let's talk a little bit about the parts. So you've got some terms as we go through this. The upper shell, well, let me step back and say, first of all, we have hard-shelled turtles and soft-shelled turtles. We'll talk about the hard-shelled ones first. The upper part of the shell is called the carapace, and then the underside, the belly, is called the plastron. The carapace and the plastron are connected together on most turtles, but not all, but most by a bony bridge. Some turtles, it's the ligaments that hold that together. The shell is part of the skeleton. So you can see here, try not to get too close to the speaker. What you can see in the shell is, if you look on the inside, you'll see that the shell is composed of the backbone, the vertebrae. The ribs come off from that, and then the bone forms around those ribs. So the shell is part of the turtle's part of its skeleton. How many of you have seen cartoons? Now, it may be a while since you've watched cartoons, but have you seen cartoons where the turtle leaves its shell, gets out, walks away? Yes. I talk to school groups and they all say yes to that, by the way. So yes, I see a few heads out there nodding. Yeah, the turtles. So can turtles do that, by the way, in real life? They cannot. That's right. And the reason they can't is because that shell is part of their skeleton. Hermit crabs can do it, but turtles cannot. So keep that in mind. Later on, we'll talk about threats and some of the injuries that turtles can get. The shells are covered by scales. Remember, we said all reptiles have that dry, scaly skin. Turtles have scaly skin as well, and they do shed that. Most of us know that, when snakes shed their skin. Actually, all reptiles shed their skin. Snakes, it tends to come off in often in one long piece. Lizards, it sheds kind of like a sunburn, little flakes come off. Turtles, they shed those scales that are on the outside of the shell. We call those scutes. They're made out of keratin, the same stuff that your hair and your fingernails are made out of. Those scales peel off. So this is a picture of one that's where it's shedding those scutes. The soft-shelled turtles then, soft shells have lost that hard shell. They've lost most of the bone in their shell, and it's mostly, their shells are composed mostly of cartilage, which is more flexible. And they're not covered with those scutes, those keratinized scutes as well. Still part of their skeleton though. Okay. So here in Iowa, we have 13 native species. Most of those are aquatic. There's one that's fully terrestrial, and then some that are both aquatic and terrestrial. Yeah, I'll just put this down. So we'll just talk about the 13 species a little bit. These are the two that most people are familiar with, the most common ones. These are our two most common turtles in the state, the painted turtle and the snapping turtle. Just a little bit on the maps. The maps show the distribution of at least the records within the state where we think these species are found. The yellow are records from after 1960. The green are records where we have, or counties where we have records before 1960 and after 1960. Then some of the maps, they'll have some blue on there, which are only older records. We don't have any newer records. So we can look at these maps, we can look at these records and see the changes that have occurred in sort of the distribution of the turtles through time. Some of that is we have better records. Some of it is clearly the turtles are not found today where they used to be here in Iowa. Both of these turtles can be found in pretty much any water body in the state. Rivers, lakes, ponds, streams, little backyard ponds in residential areas. Those two turtles actually back up again, please. These two will be found in either one of those, or they can be found in all of those. Painted turtles get their name because of this. They look like they were hand painted. If you looked at the plastron, most of them are bright red. Sometimes they can be kind of a dull rusty color, just some variation in there. Often there's red, along the underside of that carapace, and then those yellow stripes on the neck. Snapping turtles look like they come from the time of the dinosaurs. If you look at their tail, they have those sharp spines on kind of a ridge on their tails. The shells, the carapace itself has those knobs and points. If you looked at the plastron, they have a very reduced plastron. So there's a lot more skin showing and just small bone or small shell on the bottom. Snapping turtles get their name because they do snap. That's part of their defense. They have really long necks. The scientific name of a snapping turtle is, the species name is Serpentina. So it's Calidra serpentina. Serpentina means snake-like. And it's because of that long snake-like neck that they have. Both of these turtles will be pretty much anything, that they find. Snapping turtles do a lot of scavenging, and maybe as a surprise, they eat a lot of plants as well. They'll eat duckweed, they eat other aquatic plants. Often you'll find their stomachs are packed with plant material. So they're not just meat eaters. These are two of our rare turtles in the state, Blanding's turtles, which are state threatened. They're also proposed for federal listing under the Federal Endangered Species Act right now. And wood turtles, one of our rarest turtles in the state. Blanding's turtles, kind of see their coverage through this, sort of the northeastern 2/3 of the state. Some of the areas where this turtle occurs, these are really old populations. Like many turtles, Blanding's turtles can live to be really old. Blanding's turtles can live to be 90 years old. And so even though there are a lot of dots or a lot of counties with records, some of these counties only have really old individuals. They might only have males or just females in the populations. So we call those ghost populations, right? They're going to hang on because the turtles live a really long time, but eventually they're going to disappear. If you don't have males and females, you're not going to have any reproduction, no babies come along. They live in wetlands, sometimes in lakes and rivers, but they really are a wetland species. They are the most terrestrial of our aquatic species. You can see they have this high domed shell. They can pull all the way in there. Easiest way to identify them is that bright yellow neck. They do have that black or dark shell with yellow or white spots on it. As they get older, those white spots become bigger. Young turtles are black with white or yellow spots. Old turtles, once they get to be that 60, 70 years old, tend to be white turtles with a few dark areas on them. Wood turtles only found in essentially the Cedar River drainage here north of Waterloo, Cedar Falls. This is Iowa's. They do extend up into Wisconsin as well, but Iowa's population is a unique one. Genetically, they're slightly different than the ones up in Minnesota. They are a riverine species, so they spend part of the year in the rivers and then part of the year out walking along or out on the banks within just a few hundred feet of the river. And they're in primarily wooded areas. They're called wood turtles not because they live in the woods, but because their shell looks like, their carapace looks like sculpted wood. There's a picture a little later that shows that a little better. Very popular in the pet trade, and as a result, they are endangered pretty much everywhere that they're found. They're also currently proposed for federal listing for that reason. Also, very intelligent turtles. This turtle can learn to run a maze just like a rat. So similar intelligence to a rat. So what's interesting about their distribution is today they're only found in that area, but at least 10,000 years ago, towards the end of the last glacial period here in Iowa, they apparently were found down in southwest Iowa. So there's a fossil wood turtle that was found from Mills County in very southwest Iowa that was dated to just over 10,000 years ago. So presumably what happened is when the last glacier came down through Iowa, remember that Des Moines lobe of the Wisconsin Glacier, it pushed all the wood turtles to the south and to the west. And there are actually fossils from Nebraska and into Kansas as well. But then when the glacier receded, the wood turtles filled that area back in again. And then the climate here in the Midwest got warmer and drier after the last glacial period. And this area then became not suitable for the wood turtles anymore. So at one point, wood turtles had a bigger distribution in Iowa than they do today. We do have 3 species of map turtles here in Iowa as well. Map turtles are riverine species, so you're typically not going to find them in ponds and lakes, although the false map turtle does sometimes get there. So we have 3: the northern map turtle, the Ouachita map turtle, and the northern false map turtle. All look a lot alike. The way you tell them apart are the spots on their heads. So northern map turtles have one spot right behind the eye, oval, sometimes squarish spot. The Ouachita map turtle has a large kind of spot, maybe a comma-shaped or L-shaped bar right behind the eye, one spot below the eye, and then one on the lower jaw directly below that. And then the northern false map turtle has sort of a, almost a Nike swoosh right behind the eye as well. The map turtles do have these vertebral ridges as well, so little raised parts right down the middle of the carapace. That's a little different as well. And the northern map turtles, it's more of just a dark spot. You can see on the other 2, they get those raised areas. So you're going to find these in the rivers. So when you look at their distributions, these are really the rivers that they're found in. So if we look at this one, obviously the Mississippi, we have the Cedar. These counties are the Iowa River. The Wapsipinicon River comes up there. So they're related to they're going to be found in the rivers. The Ouachita, only in eastern Iowa. The northern map, primarily eastern, moves into central Iowa a little bit. And then the false map turtle you can find in the Missouri River drainage as well. They are sometimes found together, which can lead to some problems with identification because the 3 will hybridize with each other as well. So they're breeding with each other, so you find some individuals that have characteristics of all of them then as well, which makes it a little more difficult. They all even though they're all living in the same rivers, they often eat similar items, but they use the rivers differently. right? So we call that resource partitioning. Some feed at the surface, some feed at the bottom. Northern map turtles have really big heads because they feed on snails and other crustaceans. Big heads for cracking those shells open. The other two eat. That's a lesser part of their diet. So they're using the habitat slightly differently, even though they all live in the same place. Another one of our rare turtles, and this is our one fully terrestrial turtle, the ornate box turtle. Ornate box turtles are found, or the habitat is sand prairie. And so as sand prairies disappeared in the state, so did the box turtles as well. And one of our lizards, the six-line race runner or the prairie race runner, found in the same habitats, they all disappeared. So they're all reduced at the same time. We lose the habitat, we lose the species that are with them. Ornate box turtles have that high dome shell. Each of the scutes, those scales, has those yellow radiating lines on it. And if you look at the plastron, has the same pattern. That's important because a lot of people, when they travel to the south of here, pick up box turtles in Missouri or other places of the South, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and they bring them back to Iowa as pets. And then they decide they don't want them anymore, and they let them go. Almost always, those are three-toed box turtles. And so we do get three-toed box turtles here in Iowa. There are no breeding populations that we're aware of, but there's a lot of, and they're found, they're kind of found scattered around the state. The way you tell the difference between ornate box turtles and three-toed box turtles, well, their names suggest one way. Ornate box turtles have 4 toes on the back feet. Three-toed box turtles only have 3, except that it's about 40% of these that only have 3 on their back feet too. So it's not a great way. The best way is to look at the plastron. Remember, I said the plastron of the ornate box turtles has those radiating yellow lines. It looks just like this. On three-toed box turtles, they're not. It's plain. They don't have a pattern. Or if they have some dark coloring, it's not those yellow radiating lines. Red-eared sliders. But you have a pet turtle when you were, well, I was going to say a child, but maybe you have one now. Does anyone have a pet turtle or had one? Yeah. When you were a kid, what kind of turtle did you have when you were a kid? Yeah, it was this one, right? Yes. Yeah, back when I was a kid too, right? They sold those in the dime stores, in the drugstores all the time. You could buy the little hatchling turtle. It would come with a little plastic island and a palm tree as well, right? Yeah, now I see you all remembering it. That's right. There were millions of those sold. Most of those died. Many of the ones that didn't die ended up being released in the local stream or pond or lake, whatever it is. As a result, red-eared sliders are found worldwide. They were the most popular turtle in the pet trade. Millions of them were collected out of the wild or raised in captivity, sold as pets, and then people didn't want them and they've been released. Found on every continent except Antarctica, all the islands in the South Pacific, the Caribbean islands, they all have these. As a result, red-eared sliders appear on the list of the 100 most invasive species in the world. Red-eared sliders are one of them. They were originally found in Iowa. They are native to Iowa, but they're only native in very southeast Iowa. Iowa is at the northern edge of their natural range. You can see we have scattered records from around the state. Those are pets that have been released. And there's probably far more counties. These are just the ones we have records for. Probably far more counties where they're found. You can find them. You can often spot these. Yeah.
We had 2 of them. My mother named them. One was Lima Beanie and the other one was Butter Beanie.
And what happened to them?
They escaped. We had them for a long time, but she would take them outside for, some sunlight. And they got out of the dish. Then we never saw them again. Yeah.
And so you know what's out there now, right? Come on, this is an easy one. Beanie Babies, right? That's right. That's right. Okay.
Can any of those turtles live underwater only, or they all have to come up for air? I just couldn't sunning themselves a big spot.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good question. So the question is, can they breathe underwater like fish? Right. I think that's what you're asking. The answer is no. Reptiles have, so they're not. So yeah, they all have to come up to breathe. They can spend a long time underwater. Some of these turtles can spend, an hour or more underwater, but they do have to come back up to breathe. Even in the winter, they're still breathing air. They're not taking in oxygen through their. They're not taking in water into their mouths when they're hibernating underwater. They're actually taking in oxygen through their skin. They're diffusing oxygen out of the water into their skin. Anyone ever hear that when turtles are hibernating, they breathe through their butts? Oh, come on, all fourth graders say yes to that. Yes, the reason they say that is that where that happens, that gas exchange happens, is the thin skin around their cloacas, right? Cloacas, the structure on the tail where cloaca literally means common dump. It's where the eggs or sperm come out. It's where the reproductive system empties out. It's where the digestive system and the excretory system is. So it's sort of their butts. They breathe around that. They can also do that gas exchange in their mouth, but they're not taking water into their lungs.
What's their lifespan of living?
Yeah, so turtles can live, so some turtles, like the giant tortoises, can live well over 100 years. Some of the giant tortoises in captivity have lived to be 200 years. Our turtles here in Iowa, the ornate box turtles, we have marked individuals here in Iowa that are probably approaching 70 years old. As I said, the Blandings turtles can live to be 90. Some of the smaller turtles, we don't really have good age estimates, but we do have some marked individuals of this turtle that are probably well into their 60s as well. So turtles can live a long time. So two of our other really rare turtles here in Iowa. In fact, this is our rarest turtle in the state. Yellow mud turtles, only found in southeast Iowa. Even though it looks like there's 4 counties that they occur in today, there's really probably only one location where they're left in the state, and those populations are not doing well. I'll explain why here in a little bit. But these turtles are really unique because they have the shortest activity range of any North American turtle, or activity period of any North American turtle. These turtles are only active for about, some years, only around 60 days a year. Most of the time, they're down in the sand. So these turtles are really a desert species. This turtle invaded Iowa in that period right after the glacier, the last glacial period, when the Iowa became a warmer, drier place for a while, and then our climate changed and it became wetter and cooler, and we developed prairie here in Iowa. There were a lot of these desert Southwest species that moved into Iowa at that time. Most of them left, but there were little populations of this turtle that remained. There's also a snake, the Western hognose snake, that really has the same range as this turtle. And so we have these little remnant populations that remained, and they were able to remain here because the places that they live in southwest or in southeast Iowa have really deep sand deposits, shifting sand dunes, and as a result, they're also very very dry. So more desert-like, as far as Iowa can get. So these turtles occur a little bit in southeast Iowa, a little bit into Illinois, and then down into Missouri. So there's one little isolated population. You go to the southwest part of the United States, and yellow mud turtles are pretty common, even Kansas and into Nebraska. But they spend most of the year under the ground, burrow deep into that sand. They come out in the spring, about now. They'll come out, they make their way to the wetlands. They'll go down into the wetlands, they rehydrate a bunch of water. They'll also mate at that time. And then the females will eventually leave the water. They go out into the sand dunes and they lay their eggs. Males hang around the water and feed a little bit for a while. But then after the females lay their eggs, they do something unique for Iowa turtles anyway. She'll dig down in the sand, she'll lay her eggs, and then she stays there. She covers herself and everybody up with the eggs, and she sits on the eggs for a while. She's not really incubating them. Don't know if she's guarding them really, but she stays there for a while, and then eventually might pop out, walk around a little bit, but then she'll burrow down and you won't see her again, most likely until the next spring. Sometimes they pop back out for a little bit in the fall. Males eventually make their way and they dig down into the sand as well. So by the time you get to July, these turtles, you don't see them anymore. Maybe a little bit in the fall. The eastern musk turtle, sometimes called the stink pot. Stink pots, these are both sort of these dark kind of brown drab turtles. Musk turtles have those two yellow lines. Also mostly down in southeast Iowa in the lower Cedar River drainage, but those northeast Iowa populations or counties, those are Mississippi River records. They do occur in the backwaters of the Mississippi, and most of those records are actually Iowa DNR fisheries crews that pick them up when they're doing their fisheries. So again, a little bit of kind of a rare turtle. Most people never see one. Very quickly, we'll come back to why they're called stink pots. All right, those were the hard-shelled turtles here in Iowa. The two turtles that remain then are our two soft shells. We have the Midland smooth soft shell and the eastern spiny soft shell. The reason for the names, smooth soft shell or spiny soft shells, if you look along this front edge of the carapace, they have little tubercles or spines that stick out. Smooth soft shells do not have that. There's a little difference in the coloration and the spots on the back. Some are dots and dashes. The others are more sort of these round eye spots. They're called ocelli, which means eye spot. The other way you can tell them apart, though, if you're brave enough, is to look in their noses. That's what this picture is showing. Smooth or spiny soft shells, that septum that divides the two sides of their nostril. They have little protuberances that stick out. You can kind of see in that picture. If I can get I don't know if I can make that work. You can see them right there. Smooth soft shells do not, the smooth soft shells don't have those. It does require you to look in the nose of the turtle, and I wouldn't really suggest that. You can see these turtles have these long, pointed snouts. They work a little bit like a snorkel. When the turtle's underwater, they can stick their nose up and get air, but they're also really great at eating fish. These are fish eaters. Those long tubular snouts do have sharp teeth. So if you go to look in the nose of that turtle, you're probably likely to get bitten on your nose by that. They are biters, also have really long necks. Necks can reach around to their back feet. I have a coworker, we were doing some work with turtles in Michigan years ago. Catching turtles, we caught a large, smooth, soft shell, and as she was handling it, the turtle bit her on the forearm, left about a 1-inch gash on her forearm. We had to take her to the hospital. She had to get stitches to close that up. You get bitten by one of these. All right, so those are our 13 turtles in Iowa. Let's talk just a little bit about some of the other things. Turtles eat lots of different things. We've talked about a little of what some of them eat. If you have specific questions later, we can discuss that. But turtles eat a lot. Some eat plants, some eat animals, some eat both. Wood turtles, though, so this is a wood turtle again. You can kind of see more of that sculpted pattern on the carapace on that picture. Wood turtles, though, have this really kind of, cool feeding behavior. It's called worm stomping. Wood turtles eat worms, and what scientists, naturalists, other animal watchers realized a long time ago was that what the wood turtles would do is they'll walk out into an area and they'll start stomping their feet on the ground, and they'll kind of do push-ups and bang their plastron on the ground. And when they do that, these worms start popping up out of the ground. And then the wood turtles can grab them. And they actually grab them just like robins do. If you ever watched a robin catching a worm, the worm sticks its nose out and the robin grabs it and just sits there for a while. If you apply constant pressure, by the way, if you're ever trying to catch a worm, this is how you do it. You apply constant pressure. Those worms have little structures they can hold onto their burrows with, but if you wait long enough, they'll release and then you can pull them right out. That's how the robins get them out. That's how wood turtles get them out as well. Well, it was thought for a long time that the reason this works is that when it rains, what do the earthworms do? They come out of the ground, right? And so it was thought that those earthworms are responding to the raindrops hitting the ground. And as a result, they would all come out of the ground. And so they thought the turtles were mimicking the raindrops. Well, recently it's been determined that's not the case at all. In fact, what's going on is the turtles are employing something called this rare enemy effect. And a rare enemy effect is this scenario in which a predator catches its prey by exploiting a response that's usually a good strategy. So what's happening is the turtles or those worms are not trying to come out of the water because it's raining. What they're doing is trying to avoid a different predator. And the other predator is the mole. Moles, if you haven't seen a mole, you've probably seen a mole hill in your yard. Moles are insectivores. They eat a lot of insects, but they also eat a lot of earthworms. They burrow through the soil and they catch their prey underground. Well, what's been determined is that when the moles are burrowing through the ground, the earthworms are bailing out to get out of the way. Those moles are creating vibrations that the worms are picking up on, so they're escaping the predator. What's happened is the wood turtles have learned to exploit that. So what they're doing is creating those vibrations, which causes the worms to come out. The worms think they're escaping a predator, but in this case, unfortunately, there's another predator waiting at the surface for them. So it's a scenario that normally works well for the worms, but in this case, it's not. So there's been some recent research that has shown that this, in fact, is what's going on. But the interesting thing is, this idea isn't really new. Charles Darwin, you hear a lot about Charles Darwin, right? And we all know what he did, developing his theory of natural selection. He worked a lot on human behavior and things like that. But what you might not know is he also did a lot with earthworms. And Charles Darwin, way back in the 1800s, said that he thought the worms were coming out of the ground to escape the moles. He didn't have any proof at the time, but turns out he was right. So thermal regulation, someone mentioned basking a while ago. Remember, we said turtles are what we call ectothermic. They get their heat from the outside. That's different than us or birds, right? Different than birds and mammals. We're endothermic. We produce our own body heat. Turtles and the other reptiles are not able to do that. So ectothermic means that your internal body temperature is regulated by the outside air or water temperature. They're also called poikilothermic, and poikilothermic just means your body temperature can vary. We're homeothermic, right? Our body temperature doesn't vary. So reptiles, ectothermic, poikilothermic, and they use behavior then to regulate their body temperature. And so with turtles and other reptiles as well, it's basking. So we'll see the turtles out, they're basking. That warms them up, increases their metabolism, improves their digestion. Food is able to move through the body, gets digested better. Basking has some other benefits as well. It also helps remove parasites like leeches. So they come out of the water, bake in the sun, and those leeches don't like that. So they dry out, they'll fall off, they'll drop off and fall back into the water. So you can help remove leeches. Turtles are often covered with leeches. So that's what's going on here. Even on the shells, you'll see those. They'll get in around the legs and around the neck. Map turtles, remember those 3 species we have? Those map turtles, they actually have learned to get some help with that, and they use a bird to get help with that. So when map turtles bask, they'll stretch their legs out, and they'll even spread their toes. Now, that partly increases the surface area, right? More sun hitting it helps them warm up. But the other thing that does is it allows grackles to come in, and the grackles will pick the parasites off the turtles, the leeches and things like that. The turtles allow them to do that. We saw the cattle egret and the cattle in the other talk, right? Those relationships where different organisms are living together, and map turtles and grackles are doing that same thing. Defense. Remember, we said the turtle shell is its most unique feature. It's also its primary mechanism of defense. That shell does protect it from some predators. So I think, as we all know, turtles are able to pull into their shells, pull their heads, their legs, their tails, their inside. Some turtles are able to close up those shells. So some have hinges. Some have a single hinge on the plastron. Some have 2 hinges. Here in Iowa, the species with the single hinge are the musk turtle, Blanding's turtles, and ornate box turtles. And then the yellow mud turtle, that rare one, actually has 2. The ornate box turtles are the ones that have the most complete closure. They can close up both ends really tight. A lot of people think that's why they're called a box turtle, because they can close up like a box. It's actually called a box turtle because of the shape of the shell, but nevertheless, they can get in, they can close in. That keeps out a lot of predators, but not all. We'll come back to that. Stink pots, I mentioned before. Stink pots are called stink pots because they do release this foul-smelling liquid that comes from that bridge between the plastron and the carapace. Little glands there, so if you were to pick it up, and handle it, you might smell it on your hands. It tastes bad. Well, I'm told anyway. It tastes bad. And so that's the idea, though, is it makes the turtle smell bad or taste bad, and the predators then may leave it alone. Snapping turtles have a lot of defenses. Mainly, they're not afraid of you, right? They'll lower their back ends. They raise their front ends. They may hiss. If you walk around the turtle, they'll follow you around, and you get too close, and they'll, of course, snap at you as well. So they put on a really good defense, and if you're close enough, they can back it up as well. So reproduction, mating for turtles can take place either on land or in the water. Our terrestrial turtles mate on land, and the aquatic turtles, of course, mate in the water. Go ahead. As I said before, reptiles have those leathery shelled eggs. So all turtles have to lay their eggs on land, even sea turtles. Even sea turtles come on land to lay their eggs. They can't lay their eggs in the water. If they do, those eggs won't survive. They need to get oxygen through that eggshell for the young to survive. So turtles will they'll burrow into the females will come out, they'll burrow into the sand. They're usually looking for some softer sand or some softer soil. So like sandy soils, ornate box turtles, or just these loamy sand soils that a lot of the other turtles. A lot of their nests, if you read about the nests, it'll say that they are flask shaped. That's really, you can see that in this picture. This is sort of a flask, right? Wide bottom, narrow neck. This is a nest, by the way, that was exposed by erosion. This is in a stream bank. That's a cornfield that's sort of, above it there. And this stream bank, this is one of my staff actually, was canoeing or kayaking. Came along, and this stream bank is eroding away because the farmer farms right up to the stream bank. and a very vertical bank sloughing away and exposed the turtle nest. That's a snapping turtle nest there that was exposed. So those eggs are not going to survive this. Baby turtles, because, you know, why not, right? Everybody likes baby turtles. So you can see they start out pretty small, leathery shelled egg. They do begin to crack them like a lot of birds. Reptiles have that egg tooth. If you can see that little white spot on the end of the beak of that little Blanding's turtle, that's the egg tooth. So that one hadn't been out of the shell very long. They use that to slice through that eggshell so that they can get out. Little painted turtles, it gives you an idea. The hands kind of give you an idea of scale. Okay. So what's interesting about turtles is turtles have something called temperature-dependent sex determination. Many animals, many of the vertebrates anyway, like us, for instance, right? Our gender is determined by the chromosomes that we have. So if you have two X chromosomes, you're a female. If you have an X and a Y, it's a male. Many of our turtles in Iowa, most of our turtles in Iowa, that's not the case. It's not their chromosomes that determine their gender. It's actually the temperature at which the nest is incubated. So there's two different patterns, you know, we call pattern 1 and pattern 2. Pattern 1 has this essentially a single transition zone, but basically what happens is if you've got, so if we look at the charts, temperature gets higher going that way and the percent of males gets higher going that way. So at low temperatures, you get males, and at high temperatures, you get females, and somewhere in between then, you get both. Pattern 2 is you've got essentially two transition zones, but in this case, the low end, low temperatures, you get females, and the high. Actually, females are produced at low and high, and then males are produced at the intermediate stages. So either end, you get females, males only in the middle. So you can see, you know, I've got listed here which of Iowa turtles fall into both of those groups. Some temperatures, just as an example, for Blanding's turtles. So essentially, anything above 85 degrees, you get all females. Anything below 80, you get all males. And then somewhere in between, of course, you'd get both. So we only have 3 species, snapping turtles, musk turtles, and the yellow mud turtle that fall into pattern 1. All the others are there. We do have 3 species, though, that do have genetically determined sex. So wood turtles and the 2 soft shells. They do have chromosomes that determine their sex, but all the others fall into this. Threats. There are a lot of threats that turtles face in our world, but one of the biggest, or one of the most serious, are what we call the mesopredators, those medium-sized predators, and this is the worst one when it comes to turtles. Raccoons, in some places, raccoons will dig up nests, and there are places where raccoons will wipe out an entire nesting colony of turtles here in Iowa. So we get 90 or more % loss of eggs. And even if the eggs hatch, the hatchlings are eaten then. But the raccoons will also capture the adults. So this is a ornate box turtle with her with its legs eaten off. I have a Blanding's turtle that I'm doing some radio telemetry with in southeast Iowa last year. Female, good shape, makes it through the entire year until right at the end, all right before she was ready to go into hibernation last year. And my staff person who was tracking her found her with one of her back legs eaten off. She was still alive. We brought her in. She had started to heal. We had a veterinarian look at her, determined it was healing well, so we thought we could release her, let her try to hibernate. It was right before hibernation. Wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, but the good news is she's out. She's doing fine this year, and she's moved. She's moved away from where she hibernated to a new wetland already this year. This year, Yeah, when she came out of hibernation this year, she's moved about a quarter mile. There are lots of turtles out there that are missing legs or feet. It's a very common injury. It's these predators. In hibernation, muskrats will eat the feet off of and legs off of turtles in hibernation as well. I don't think of muskrats as being a carnivore, a meat eater, but during the winter, they will. So mesopredators are a big problem, and it's largely due to the nests, and you can get 0% reproduction, zero recruitment of new individuals year after year in these populations because they're raccoons. Raccoons are not the only one. Possums, fox, skunks, they all do it, but raccoons are the biggest offender.
Do they hibernate through like the spring, through winter, or through the fall?
From fall to spring, yeah. So they'll go into hibernation. It depends a lot on water temperature and air temperature. A lot of the turtles are not true hibernators like you would think of with like a groundhog, where groundhogs will go into hibernation. They go to sleep in the fall. They don't wake up till spring. They have special fat that they use. A lot of the reptiles have a special form of hibernation called brumation, where they'll wake up throughout the winter. Bears do this as well. They'll wake up on warm days. They might move around. Snakes, if it's a really warm day in January, you'll see some snakes out on land even, or out on the surface. Yeah, so they don't all hibernate on land. In fact, very few do. Ornate box turtles hibernate on land. They will burrow down into the soil, and they have to get below the frost line. So probably below 4 feet here in Iowa to be safe. All the other turtles hibernate underwater. So they'll move into the rivers and lakes and streams and wetlands to hibernate in the winter. And again, they're not breathing through their lungs at that time. They're diffusing that oxygen out of the water into their blood, and carbon dioxide out of the blood into the water. Even ornate box turtles, raccoons will rip those shells apart. They'll literally tear the bottom part of the shell off to get at the turtle. They'll reach in, they'll grab that leg, and they'll chew it off then. Very significant predator. Raccoon populations, as you might have guessed, in Iowa over the last, certainly 100 years, but probably 50 years have skyrocketed during that time. If you remove raccoons, turtle populations will increase because that reproduction is more successful. Go ahead. Yeah. The other threat that's out there is climate change. I'm sure you hear a lot about climate change these days. Climate change has a lot of effects, can affect habitats, of course, which turtles. But remember, how the gender of turtles, a lot of our turtles, is determined by temperature. As you change the climate, as you change the temperature, it affects the sex ratio of those clutches. So if we warm the temperature up, we make those nesting areas much warmer, you're going to end up with one gender or the other, either all males or all females. And it depends, again, if they're pattern 1 or pattern 2. And the scales are hard to read here, but the idea here is that at low temperatures, these are for painted turtles, but at low temperatures, you get a lot of males. But as the temperature goes up, you get a lot of females. So if you're raising the temperature of the nesting areas because the climate is getting warmer, or if you clear the trees or other brush, and now there's more sun hitting those nesting areas, you're going to end up with a lot of females and no males, and over time, that's going to have a significant effect on the populations. As woody vegetation, trees and shrubs, willows, things like that, move on to sandbars, those map turtles, where they nest, those sandbars get shaded, cools those temperatures down, and you end up with a lot more females than males. So climate change is affecting turtles worldwide. Sea turtles, this is a problem for sea turtles as well. Sea turtles are being affected by climate change because their sex ratios of populations are changing. Other threats, cars, farm machinery, things like that. Turtles get hit by cars. Have you ever seen a turtle on a road? Oh, come on. You can raise your hands. I'm sure you have. I see somebody back there that I know has, and she didn't raise her hand either. But yes, turtles they're on roads. They cross roads. They want to get from the wetlands they're living in to the nesting areas, or their hibernation areas. They're crossing roads. They're getting hit. Can the turtle leave its shell? Why? Because the shell is part of its skeleton, right? And when you crack that shell, when it gets run over by a car, it not only does it break the bones of the shell, it certainly can cause damage to the spinal cord as well, in addition to internal damage and things like that. But you can end up with paralyzed turtles. If the shell is just broken and there isn't any of that paralysis or other injuries, the shells can potentially be repaired. You can put them together. It's just like a broken bone on you. You put it together, it will heal. It takes a long time, but turtles can heal and potentially be released. All right, we're getting really close here. The harvesting. As you might know, you can harvest turtles here in Iowa. And harvesting here in Iowa has gone on, well, before Europeans arrived. You know, Native Americans harvested turtles here in Iowa. We see that if you look at some of the archaeological digs around the state, you see turtle shells and you see bones, things like that. When Europeans arrived, though, it became more of a commercial business. Started trapping turtles throughout the Midwest, including Iowa. All manner of capture, hand collecting, hooks, traps, nets, whatever it was all fair game. Really, once we got into the 1990s, for sure, probably 80s, 90s through much of today, many of the turtles that were harvested here in Iowa and other places were shipped to Asian markets as food. Although a lot of it, historically was used as food here in the United States as well. Most of the harvesting here in Iowa, for sure, that occurred happened between April and September. So these are the peaks. These are snapping turtles and soft-shelled turtles examples. Most of it is occurring during the nesting season, during the reproductive season of the turtles historically. So we're catching those females before they lay their eggs in a lot of cases. So in addition to the fact that when the female lays her eggs, they're going to get eaten by the raccoons, many of those eggs were never laid because they were captured by commercial turtle harvesters. Go ahead. So up until 1987, there was no regulation in Iowa regarding turtles. You could take as many as you wanted. You could take them any time of the year. You could take males. You could take females. You could take big ones, little ones. You could collect eggs. It didn't matter. In 1987, though, finally, there were new turtle regulations, and it limited which species could be taken. Snapping turtles, those two soft shells, painted turtles, could have been taken from any waters in the state, ponds, lakes, rivers, whatever. Map turtles could only be taken from the Mississippi River and its backwaters. And then there were commercial harvesters and recreational harvesters. Commercial harvesters were required for the first time to have a license, but there was no limit on what they could take or when. They were required to submit a monthly report, though. That's important because this is the first time that the DNR ever had any clue as to how many turtles were being taken in the state. Recreational harvesters just needed a fishing license, and they couldn't sell the turtles. They didn't have to report their catch. In 2006, though, there was an update to the regulations which removed map turtles, so you can no longer take map turtles, and finally prohibited the take of eggs. In 1993, I visited, at that time, the only commercially, the only federally inspected commercial turtle slaughterhouse in Iowa. It's down in southeast Iowa. I visited it with the Iowa DNR with some game wardens. And, you know, that buyer was buying hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of snapping turtles and probably other turtles as well. But at the time, he had trays and trays of turtle eggs. He said at the time he had 31,000 turtle eggs. And those were destined to be sold on the Asian market where they'd be pickled and then eaten as well. So 31,000 eggs in addition to all the females that were taken out of the populations as well. So really remember, first time that they had to report how many they're catching. So 1987 is the first year we have good data on how many turtles are being collected. So between 1987 and 2012, you can see the trend was really increasing. It kind of bounced all over, you know, depending on the year. The lowest year was 1993, by the way. Probably not a surprise, right? The flood year, harvesters couldn't get out there. But the turtle harvest continued until about 2012, and that's roughly when it peaks. And at that time, it was over 200,000 pounds of turtles that were harvested in Iowa every year. By 2012, every state around Iowa, it either prohibited or severely reduced the harvest of turtles in the state. You couldn't either in Minnesota and Missouri and Nebraska, all of those. You couldn't harvest turtles there, or the catch limits were so low. Well, maybe not a surprise. What that did was it caused all the harvesters to come to Iowa, where it was still the Wild West, right? We didn't really have any. Remember, you had to report how many, but there was no limit. So because of that, it placed a lot more pressure on Iowa's populations. Iowa still had no season, no bag limits, things like that. Well, in 2017, that finally changed. There were new turtle harvest rules implemented. You could still, snapping turtles painted in the 2 soft shells can be harvested, but now there's a season, or at least a closed period. So no harvesting between May 15th and July 15th, which is the nesting season for females. So we're allowing those females to nest. The raccoons still have their feast, but at least we're letting the females nest. There are some daily catch limits now. So that harvesting season is for commercial collectors, recreational collectors. All you need is a fishing license. There's still a continuous open season on snapping turtles anyway, for those. So there are some now, in addition to those, the sort of no catch period, there is a daily catch limit for snapping turtles, 1 soft shell, either spiny or smooth, and 1 painted turtle. And that's the same for both commercial and recreational catchers or harvesters. Commercial turtle harvesters, there's some possession limits, so similar to what you see with other game species. Well, what we can see is prior to 2017, the average annual catch in Iowa was around 140,000 pounds. Right? Remember, it peaked over 200,000 at times, but the average catch was 140,000 after 2012, or 2017. So from 2017 to 2022, that drops to just a few hundred pounds. And actually, it's continued to drop since then. Today, it's only a few pounds of snapping turtles that are collected in Iowa every year. So most of the harvest has stopped in Iowa, which then is going to, presumably will allow those populations to increase. So turtle conservation, turtles need a lot of help. We've talked about some of the threats and some of the things that have already occurred, but there are a lot of, conservation measures we can do for turtles, protect nest sites, protect habitats. We have now some new, some new harvesting laws or regulations in Iowa. We have personal actions to help reduce climate change, which can affect with the turtles, the reproduction in particular. Road mortality. Yeah, there are things going on with road mortality as well. You can put in underpasses for turtles. This is a project I worked on in Cedar Rapids, the Highway 100 project. Some of you may have heard about it at the time. Highway 100 was a controversial road project in Iowa for lots of reasons, but there was a population, or there is a population of Blanding's turtles there. In the Iowa DOT, I worked with the Iowa DOT to develop mitigation as they were putting this new road in to ensure that the turtles were not going to get hit on the road. We constructed an underpass for the turtles. We built that before they built the road. We put in a new hibernation pond for them as well. And then we excluded them from the construction area. So turtles had to go through our underpass while the road was being built. And today, that's still the case. That underpass is there. There are special fences that direct the turtles to the underpass. So they have to go under there. We built the pond and the underpass prior to the road, put up this silt fence to exclude the turtles so they couldn't get onto the construction area. We actually blocked off the underpass until the first spring. The first spring, 2014, the first day that we opened this up, right, we had a fence, we had this silt fence across here. The first day we took that away, we had traps on the other side. We wanted to see how many turtles went through. The first day, 80 turtles moved through our underpass. Nearly every one of the Blanding's turtles that we were tracking, we had radio transmitters on them, so we knew where every Blanding's turtle was. We eventually then pulled the traps on the other side, and the turtles were allowed. And then the whole time, the 2 years the road is being built, our radio turtles are moving back and forth. We never lost a turtle while it was being constructed, and no turtles are hit on the road there today because they can't get onto the road. Again, there's that special fence now, a permanent fence that's here that ties into our underpass. So if the turtle hits a fence here, it walks down to the underpass. So underpasses work. You may have heard this. It's recently come up in the Iowa legislature. There was a bill. It didn't make its way through, but there was a bill in the Iowa legislature that would have forced the Iowa DOT to do more of this. The thing is, the Iowa DOT is already ahead of that. They're already doing this, looking at other sites in the state to put in underpasses for road mortality. So quickly to wrap this up, a few things to remember with turtle conservation. Turtles have a very low reproductive potential. Although a female turtle may live to be 90 years old, she can reproduce that entire time. In fact, Blanding's turtle females produce more eggs after age 55 than they do before. Most of her eggs will never survive though, right? Most of her eggs, that female can live decades, and she's going to build many, many nests. She's going to lay lots of eggs over that time, but only a few of her offspring will ever make it, be adults and have their own eggs because of all those threats that are out there, right? A really low percentage of eggs ever hatch, and a really low percentage of hatchlings ever survive. So the loss of any reproductive member of a population is a big loss. This is why harvesting female turtles during the nest
turtle good to eat or no?
People keep track of like the record fish, weight or size. Does anybody do that for snapping turtles, like the biggest one ever weighed and all that kind of stuff? One last question. Um, I'm- I had a turtle that had a hole in its tongue, in the back. Do all turtles have that, or is it just the snapping turtle? What is that function? Yeah. What- And that's exactly it. I said, we're going to learn a lot about turtles and other things too. It's really a great talk, and you may have further questions. We're up at the table or so, and Terry and Wendy, his wife, is a top-notch birder, by the way. She's been on some of our field trips and things too. So take some time to visit and enjoy some treats. And thank you again. Let's give it up for Terry.
Some research done, as I said, with wood turtles, animes. Uh, So I think, research, I don't know, it's a long time, probably, how that, with those wood